It's mad. It's completely mad because you know how I always relate everything to football, right? I mean,
Yeah.
imagine you have a football match where there's 50 players in one team and 0
Mm.
players in the other team,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's and even 2 players make a big difference, right? You know, uh it makes it makes a huge it doesn't make any sense. I mean, think about it in terms of communication. I mean, it's obvious, but there was a there was a post that I saw on LinkedIn last week, which was really nice, which was about how communication, how the channels of communication change
Mm.
exponentially depending upon the number of people you have in communication. So if you have 2 people, there's only one line of communication.
Mm.
If you have 3 people, like a triangle, it's a triangle,
Mm.
then there's 3 lines of communication. If you have 4 people, like a square, well, there's
Mm.
1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5. You got your diagonal lines as well. So there's just exponential growth,
Mm.
and as you build up the number of people, the number of possible communication lines is infinite, really.
Mm.
Um, and if you and even if you've only got like 5 or 10 people, there's a lot of possibilities. If you have 50 people, I mean, you should be dominating everything. You know,
Mhm.
you should have no competition at all if you've got 50 people,
Mm.
basically.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, if you're inside, there's a different way of looking at it, but not having all the information and looking at the basics, it's just
Mm.
sabotage, right?
Yeah.
Is what it is, because you can't in any way progress. You can't in any way move forward in that kind of scenario. Uh, First of all, certain people don't have a boss. Second of all, if there is a boss, the boss is somewhere else doing something else. It's impossible for somebody on one side of Europe to manage what's happening on the other side of Europe. It's just not possible, right? You know, it's like getting a taxi driver from Barcelona and putting them in Krakow, right? You know, they're going to be completely lost.
Mm.
They have no idea where to go, what to do. Um, Different culture, different language, different habits, different environment, different food, different leisure activities, different everything, different government, different people to
Mm.
communicate with and have contact with. It's just different. So then then having nobody in an area or nobody in any specific field, that means there will not be any progress. And there's an old saying that if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. Really,
Mm.
yeah. There's very little stagnant, not moving position. You know, the water's always
Mm.
flowing, right?
Yeah.
It's going one way or the other way or whatever. It's always moving. There's always something going on. Um, and so, and the fact that every day is a business day means that every day you're not in the game, you lose.
Yeah.
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 Just like, if another team is winning all the time and you're losing all the time, they go to the top of the league and you go to the bottom of the league, and that's that. Right? Everybody understands. So, uh, the, the, the fact that, the one of the things that I've noticed over the last 2 or 3 years that's happened in business is what the French call the laissez-faire attitude, which is whatever.
Mm.
No, je to tak, nie? Tak, čo môžeme
Mm.
spraviť? Čo môžeme robiť? No, je to. It's this lazy. Uh, um, there are other words in English, I suppose. Lackadaisical is a very complicated word, but it just means lazy. It's a
Mm.
uh, lazy attitude towards changes, because for quite a period of time, people's hands have been tied together
Mhm.
and they haven't really been able to do anything. Everybody was told, wait, which is in business. You don't wait in business, right? I mean, yes, there's the right moment to make a move and strike, but you don't wait. You're always doing something. If not
Mhm.
here, then there. Yeah, you're always trying to move forward. So always applying a little bit of pressure to try to make a difference. And if there's nobody in that segment, area, position, market, there's nobody to communicate with anybody. And business is communication.
Mhm.
That's what it is. It's people talking to each other. And as we discussed previously, when there's less communication, there tends to be more conflict. Now, it's a strange concept or scenario, but the getting back into the market after getting out of the market is starting again from zero. And the only way to not start from zero is to headhunt and
Mhm.
steal somebody from another company, which is an expensive process and might not be the nicest or best way to progress. So yeah, seeing countries that are big markets not progress is is frustrating, as is when somebody has to do two jobs. And we talked about this before, that that you can't fully take on somebody else's responsibility in a
Mhm.
company because it's a full job. And we're human beings, right? We're limited. We can't really multitask.
Mhm.
You really you can't really cook the dinner and play with your daughter at the same time. You know what I mean? It there's I think the whole concept of multitasking is false, right?
Mhm.
I don't think I think you do one thing and then you leave it and then you go and do something else. I don't think you can really run two things at the same time. I think computers can do that, but I don't think people
Mhm.
can. You can have more than one project and you can have more than one client and everything's got its own little box, but you can only focus on one task at a time.
Mhm.
And your job is your main task. And you can't really have in a company, it's very complicated to have more than one task. That's why you can't work in the business and on the business at the same time, which is not everybody's, it's a lot of people's problem at the beginning, at the start. They're not sure whether they want to work in the business or on the business, and they definitely don't understand that that it's funny. I was just in relation to this. I was on Instagram yesterday, and I noticed that Grant Cardone was doing a live session on Instagram, and he's a real estate manager, and he was talking about a project that he has and seminars and things. Selling. He's selling,
Mhm.
always selling, right? Selling the next thing, the next opportunity, the next prospect, the next idea. And it's funny because I'm not sure how this is completely related to this, but he was saying that you can't make any money working. That was his speech. You can't make any money working. It's really interesting. Yeah. And he he basically had these examples where he's like, you work to make this much money, but where does the money go?
Mhm.
It goes here, here, here,
Mhm.
here, and here. It's like all of this is kind of predestined. And however much money you make, you spend. Yeah. If you make a little money, for the majority of people, right? I mean, the super organized, financially literate people are spending 60%, saving 40%. Although that's like a less than 1% of culture, right? Because it's really difficult to do that. Or you have to have the right mindset to do it. And he was explaining that unless your money is working for you, you won't make any money. He said, if you're working for money, you won't make any because you're working to survive. But if money is working for you, there's something that sounds good, but what he's talking about is, I guess, the essence of passive incomes, where unfortunately, I don't like this, unfortunately, like property ownership. So he's into property ownership, which is his wealth management company. And he's basically explaining that he runs a business where everybody else works. That's his business model. Everybody else works to pay the rent on the property that he owns to give him the money that he needs. Yeah. And the number of, obviously, the greater number of properties you have, as long as they're well managed, the greater the growth in income is, and it grows exponentially. And it's a sort of win-win scenario for him and his investors because of the way the system is designed. The way the system and the system is pushing people towards renting now as well, which is rather than life incomes, which is what people looked at, say, 100 years ago. It's very old, but people still think like that. People are thinking in terms of now monthly principles, and he explained it very well. He's like, you're not gonna, unless you are completely unique in what you do, and the best of the best, which is really difficult to be, then you will have just enough, you will have less than just enough to survive, because everybody's got to find a way to navigate the waters. It was just really, really, really interesting and simple, and really pointed out the obvious, that there's a lot of running to go nowhere. Now, sometimes you have to keep the wheels turning, right? You know, you in everything, in business, in life, in fitness, and whatever you do, you have to keep things moving. Otherwise, you know, once things stop, it's difficult to get them started again. So it's like the heart, right? You know, keep the heart beating, because once it stops, that's it. So sort of do what you can. And if business is not constantly moving, if you're not constantly searching, if you're not, as we said before, penetrating the large markets, then it's a great loss. And people can argue on the other side that well, it's something for the future. Yep. Yeah, well, at least there's somewhere to go and somewhere to grow and something to, you know, that's for someone in a position similar to you in the company, it means there's always work. Right. If everybody did if everybody did their jobs perfectly, maybe there wouldn't be your job, right? It's funny that, you know, we all cover each other's mistakes, right? So so it is natural that that these different positions exist, but it's it's interesting what the view is from the top, and how it's wild that a company that is so big still has these issues and problems that it has to deal with. But then, as I said, when you're so big, it's hard to see how big the problem is. So many people, so many places, everything is what somebody else says, right? And you've got to take everything with, we say take everything with salt, which means is you trust people, but it takes time to understand the bigger situation. What kind of analogy? I can only think of a really bad analogy, which is that nobody believed the Titanic would sink. Okay. Nobody believed it. It's impossible, unsinkable. Which well, you got a big hole in the side of your ship, right? You know, no, there's not enough fingers to put in the big hole to stop all the water coming in. So, and it's interesting because one hole sinks the entire ship, right? And maybe a company is the same kind of thing. A company is kind of like a big ship, right? It's floating on the water, it's going in a direction, it's full of people, everybody's got all these different jobs to do, everybody's working for the same goal, to get somewhere. And that's why we use the word ship, partnership. Yeah, that's why we use that word, because it is just like a big ship, really. And ships can sink if people are not careful enough or are not responsible enough. You know, that everything is somebody else's problem, right? And I'd say, oh, we'll just give it to them, or we just give it to them, or they'll solve it. And it's like, well, you just hope that people are responsible enough. You hope that people are sensible enough and intelligent enough and have had enough experience to be able to solve the problems, which might or might not be true. If you've got a big company, you might have, let's say, infinite resources that you can use. Might not be bothered about small problems, but small problems for one person can be big problems for somebody else. So that's another thing to think about as well. You can't just give more and more problems to people and expect them to solve them. So it is quite understandable that a boss might not have time to take another boss's tasks on, which might have a little bit of a positive side to it, because if you've got a team that you can trust and that are hardworking, and you devolve responsibility and power to that team, then maybe things can work. But where's the accountability? And you know, who do you talk to? Who do you complain to? Who do you liaise with? Who do you pass things to so that they can pass things to other people? So